In the shadowed corridors of power, where whispered conversations determine the fate of nations and empires, there exists an unspoken language understood only by those who have mastered the art of strategic influence. This language is not taught in universities nor discussed in polite society, yet it governs every significant decision made in boardrooms, political chambers, and the private studies of the world's most powerful individuals. The premise is deceptively simple, yet profoundly transformative. The individual who destroys their weak self becomes invulnerable to destruction by others. This principle, when combined with 13 carefully crafted rules of engagement with power players, creates an unstoppable force in the realm of human influence and political maneuvering. Consider the trajectory of any individual who has risen from obscurity to command respect among the elite. Their journey invariably involves a fundamental metamorphosis, a shedding of naive assumptions, emotional vulnerabilities, and self-defeating behaviors that once made them easy prey for more sophisticated operators. This transformation is not merely cosmetic. It represents a complete reconstruction of one's psychological architecture, creating an individual capable of navigating the treacherous waters of high-stakes relationships while maintaining their strategic advantage. The weak self manifests in countless ways: the need for approval that makes one compromise their position, the emotional reactions that reveal one's true intentions, the inability to maintain composure under pressure, the tendency to trust without verification, and the failure to recognize when one is being manipulated or tested. Each of these weaknesses represents a potential point of exploitation, a crack in one's armor that skilled adversaries can leverage to achieve their own objectives at your expense. The destruction of this weak self is not an act of violence, but rather an act of careful reconstruction. It involves developing an acute awareness of one's own psychological patterns, understanding the motivations and tactics of others, and cultivating the discipline necessary to act in accordance with strategic objectives rather than immediate emotional impulses. This process creates an individual who operates from a position of strength, someone who cannot be easily manipulated, intimidated, or destroyed by external forces. When this inner transformation combines with sophisticated networking strategies, the result is an individual capable of building and maintaining relationships with the most influential figures in any given sphere. These relationships become the foundation for acquiring information, resources, and opportunities that would otherwise remain inaccessible to those operating from conventional approaches to professional and personal development. Rule 1. Master the art of calculated vulnerability. The first rule appears paradoxical to those unfamiliar with advanced psychological manipulation. Strategic vulnerability often creates stronger connections than displays of strength. However, this vulnerability must be carefully calculated, never genuine weakness, but rather a deliberately crafted opening that invites others to feel superior while simultaneously creating a sense of investment in your success. Power players, despite their sophistication, possess the same fundamental human psychology as everyone else. They respond positively to individuals who make them feel important, intelligent, and influential. By presenting yourself as someone who recognizes their superiority while maintaining your own dignity and competence, you create a dynamic that appeals to their ego while establishing a foundation for mutual benefit. The execution requires precise calibration. Share challenges or uncertainties that are real enough to be believable, but not significant enough to undermine confidence in your capabilities. Seek advice on matters where their expertise genuinely exceeds yours, but frame these requests in ways that acknowledge their wisdom while demonstrating your own strategic thinking. The goal is to create the impression that you are someone worth investing in. Talented enough to succeed with proper guidance, humble enough to accept their wisdom, and strategic enough to be a valuable ally once you achieve your objectives. This approach works because it satisfies the psychological needs of powerful individuals while creating obligations and emotional investment. When someone provides guidance or assistance, they become psychologically invested in your success. Their advice becomes part of your achievements, and your failures reflect poorly on their judgment. This creates a subtle but powerful motivation for continued support and advocacy. The vulnerability must never extend to core strategic matters or reveal genuine weaknesses that could be exploited. Instead, focus on areas where uncertainty is reasonable and expected, market conditions you're navigating for the first time, cultural nuances in new environments, or technical aspects outside your primary expertise. These admissions of limitation appear honest and reasonable, while creating opportunities for meaningful exchange without compromising your fundamental position. Rule 2. Develop intelligence networks within their inner circles. Information represents the ultimate currency in relationships with power players. The individual who consistently provides valuable, timely, and exclusive intelligence becomes indispensable to those who make decisions affecting large numbers of people and significant resources. However, developing such intelligence networks requires patience, discretion, and the ability to provide value before expecting returns. Begin by identifying the various layers of personnel surrounding your target individuals: assistants, advisors, security personnel, family members, and long-term colleagues. Each of these individuals possesses unique insights and access to different types of information. The assistant knows the daily schedule and immediate concerns. The advisor understands strategic thinking and decision-making processes. Family members reveal personal motivations and psychological patterns. Long-term colleagues can provide historical context and predict behavioral patterns. Cultivating relationships with these individuals requires understanding their own needs, challenges, and aspirations. Assistants often feel undervalued and appreciate recognition for their expertise and contribution. Advisors may seek validation for their insights or opportunities to expand their own influence. Family members might desire more understanding of the pressures their powerful relative faces or seek opportunities for their own advancement. The approach must be subtle and patient. Direct attempts to extract information or obviously transactional relationships will be quickly identified and reported. Instead, focus on providing genuine value to these individuals. Professional opportunities, useful connections, interesting information from your own networks, or simply thoughtful conversation and respect for their insights. Over time, these relationships naturally evolve into sources of valuable intelligence. The intelligence gathered must be used judiciously. Information that could harm the primary target or their inner circle should be kept confidential and never used in ways that could be traced back to your sources. Instead, focus on intelligence that helps you better understand decision-making patterns, upcoming opportunities, potential challenges, and the most effective approaches for future interactions. This information allows you to position yourself advantageously while maintaining the trust and confidence of your network. Rule 3. Control information. Flow to create dependency while gathering intelligence is crucial. Controlling its distribution creates even greater power. Become the conduit through which valuable information flows to your target power players, and you become essential to their decision-making processes. This requires developing sources of unique information and establishing yourself as a reliable filter and analyst. Identify areas where your targets have information gaps: emerging markets, technological developments, regulatory changes, or competitive intelligence. Develop expertise and connections in these areas that allow you to provide insights unavailable through their existing channels. The key is not just providing information, but providing analysis and context that helps them understand the implications and potential responses. Create a reputation for reliability and accuracy. Never provide unverified information or speculate beyond what the evidence supports. When you do provide intelligence, include your assessment of its reliability and the reasoning behind your conclusions. This professional approach builds trust and confidence in your judgment, making your communications more influential over time. Establish regular communication patterns that keep you visible without becoming intrusive. A weekly briefing email highlighting relevant developments, a monthly strategic analysis, or timely alerts about significant events create consistent touchpoints that reinforce your value. The frequency and format should match their preferences and communication styles, requiring observation and adaptation over time. The information you provide should be exclusive when possible. Intelligence that is widely available adds little value to sophisticated individuals who already have access to multiple information sources. Focus on insights that emerge from your unique position, network, or analytical approach. This exclusivity makes your communications more valuable and harder to replace with alternative sources. Rule 4. Position yourself as the bridge between competing interests. Power players frequently find themselves managing complex relationships with other influential individuals who may have conflicting objectives. By positioning yourself as a neutral bridge between these competing interests, you become valuable to multiple parties simultaneously while gaining insights into various strategic perspectives. This positioning requires careful analysis of the relationship dynamics within your target network. Identify individuals who need to cooperate despite having different objectives, competing for similar resources, or holding conflicting philosophical positions. These tensions create opportunities for someone who can facilitate communication, find common ground, or structure mutually beneficial arrangements. Develop relationships with all relevant parties while maintaining strict confidentiality about information shared by each. Your value lies in your ability to understand all perspectives without betraying specific confidences. This requires developing a reputation for absolute discretion and the ability to separate information that can be shared from information that must remain confidential. Facilitate introductions and communications when appropriate, but always with explicit permission from all parties involved. Sometimes this involves direct introductions. Other times it means carrying messages or proposals between individuals who cannot communicate directly due to political or strategic considerations. The goal is to create value for all parties while establishing yourself as an essential facilitator. Look for opportunities to structure win-win scenarios that address the underlying interests of competing parties. This requires understanding not just their stated positions, but their fundamental needs, constraints, and long-term objectives. Creative solutions that meet these underlying needs while allowing all parties to claim victory establish your reputation as a strategic thinker and valuable ally. Rule 5. Leverage reciprocity. Through strategic favors, the principle of reciprocity represents one of the most powerful forces in human psychology, but its application in relationships with power players requires sophisticated understanding of what constitutes valuable assistance to individuals who already possess significant resources and influence. Conventional favors, financial assistance, basic introductions, or routine support hold little value for individuals who can easily obtain such help through existing channels. Instead, focus on providing assistance that leverages your unique position, skills, or network in ways that would be difficult or impossible for them to obtain elsewhere. Consider opportunities where your specific background, connections, or expertise can solve problems that their existing resources cannot address efficiently. This might involve cultural translation in international situations, technical expertise in specialized areas, access to specific communities or networks, or the ability to handle sensitive matters that require discretion and reliability. The timing of favors is crucial. Assistance provided during moments of particular need or pressure carries far greater weight than the same help offered during routine circumstances. Stay alert to situations where your targets face unusual challenges, time constraints, or strategic dilemmas where your specific capabilities could provide solutions. Document the assistance you provide without making it obvious that you are keeping score. The goal is not to create immediate obligations, but to establish a pattern of valuable contribution that builds your reputation and creates subtle psychological pressures for reciprocation when appropriate opportunities arise. Never directly request reciprocation or mention your previous assistance when asking for support. Instead, allow the natural psychology of reciprocity to work while maintaining the appearance that your assistance was provided without expectation of return. This approach is more effective and maintains the dignity of all parties involved. Rule 6. Understand and mirror communication styles. Power players have developed specific communication preferences and patterns that reflect their psychological makeup, cultural background, and operational requirements. Adapting your communication style to match their preferences significantly increases your effectiveness while demonstrating social intelligence and respect for their time and attention. Study how your targets prefer to receive information. Detailed reports versus executive summaries. Formal presentations versus informal conversations. Written documentation versus verbal briefings. Notice their decision-making patterns, response times, and the types of questions they ask. These patterns reveal how they process information and what factors influence their judgments. Observe their interpersonal style during various types of interactions. Some individuals prefer direct, confrontational dialogue that challenges their thinking. Others respond better to respectful, deferential approaches that acknowledge their position and expertise. Some appreciate humor and personal connection, while others maintain strictly professional boundaries. Matching these preferences makes your interactions more comfortable and productive for both parties. Pay attention to their energy levels and time management patterns. Some power players are most receptive to new ideas and complex discussions early in the morning when their mental energy is highest. Others prefer brief, focused interactions during busy periods and longer conversations during specifically scheduled strategic discussions. Timing your communications to match their natural rhythms increases the likelihood of positive responses. Adapt your language and terminology to match their background and interests. Technical experts appreciate precise, detailed language that demonstrates deep understanding. Financial professionals respond to metrics, ROI calculations, and risk assessments. Military leaders prefer clear, concise briefings with specific recommendations and contingency planning. This adaptation shows respect for their expertise while making your communications more accessible and persuasive. Rule 7. Create exclusive access and experiences. Power players, despite their resources, often lack access to certain experiences or opportunities due to their public profile, security requirements, or the insularity of their usual social circles. Identify experiences that would be particularly valuable to your targets but difficult for them to arrange independently. This might involve access to restricted locations, meetings with individuals outside their usual network, cultural experiences that require special connections, or opportunities to engage in activities away from their normal scrutiny and pressure. The exclusivity must be genuine and meaningful. Experiences that could easily be arranged through their existing staff or resources add little value. Focus on opportunities that emerge from your unique relationships, expertise, or position. Perhaps you have access to private collections, exclusive events, or individuals who avoid public attention but might be willing to meet privately with serious people. Consider their personal interests and hobbies that may be neglected due to their professional responsibilities. Many power players have intellectual curiosities, artistic interests, or recreational activities that they pursue privately but rarely have time to explore fully. Creating opportunities for them to engage in these interests in meaningful ways builds personal connection while providing genuine value. Document these experiences subtly through photographs, videos, or written accounts that can serve as lasting reminders of your role in creating memorable moments. However, respect any request for privacy and never use such documentation in ways that could compromise their security or reputation. Rule 8. Master the timing of approach and withdrawal. The rhythm of engagement with power players requires sophisticated understanding of when to advance and when to retreat. Excessive attention becomes annoying regardless of the value you provide, while insufficient contact allows relationships to atrophy and competitors to gain advantage through more consistent presence. Study their natural cycles of availability and receptiveness. Most power players have predictable patterns: busy periods when they focus intensely on specific challenges, and quieter periods when they have more bandwidth for strategic thinking and relationship building. Business leaders may be most accessible between major product launches or financial reporting periods. Politicians may have more time for relationship building between legislative sessions or campaign periods. Recognize the signals that indicate when they need space or are dealing with particularly sensitive matters. During crisis situations, legal challenges, or personal difficulties, maintaining respectful distance while remaining available for legitimate assistance demonstrates both intelligence and loyalty. Inappropriate approaches during such periods can permanently damage relationships. Understand the difference between being helpful and being intrusive. Power players value individuals who can anticipate their needs and provide assistance without being asked, but they become annoyed by people who constantly seek attention or validation. The ideal approach involves providing value consistently, while allowing them to control the pace and direction of relationship development. Develop patience for long-term relationship building rather than expecting immediate returns on your investment of time and attention. Relationships with power players often develop slowly as they test your reliability, discretion, and value over extended periods. Premature attempts to leverage relationships before they are fully established often result in permanent exclusion from their inner circle. Rule 9. Cultivate reputation through strategic associations. Your reputation among power players is significantly influenced by the other relationships and associations they observe you maintaining. Strategic cultivation of your broader network creates positive impressions while providing additional access points and opportunities for advancement within elite circles. Identify individuals who are respected by your primary targets and work to build meaningful relationships with them. These secondary relationships serve multiple purposes. They provide alternative routes to access and influence, create opportunities for beneficial introductions, and enhance your reputation through association with other respected individuals. Participate in organizations, events, and initiatives that attract the type of people you want to influence. However, avoid obvious networking events where everyone is clearly seeking to make connections for personal advancement. Instead, focus on substantive activities, charitable boards, industry committees, educational institutions, or cultural organizations, where relationships develop naturally around shared interests and commitments. Demonstrate consistency in your values and behavior across all your relationships. Power players often investigate the backgrounds and character of individuals they are considering for closer association. Inconsistent behavior or questionable associations in any part of your network can undermine your credibility in all relationships. Build relationships with journalists, academics, and other individuals who influence public opinion and professional reputation. While you should never seek publicity for its own sake, having positive relationships with opinion leaders creates insurance against potential reputation attacks and provides opportunities to shape public perception when necessary. Rule 10. Develop emotional intelligence and psychological insight. Understanding the psychological motivations and emotional patterns of power players provides significant advantages in building influence and predicting behavior. Despite their sophisticated public personas, these individuals are driven by the same fundamental human needs and fears as everyone else, though often in more complex and subtle manifestations. Study the psychological profiles of your targets by observing their decision-making patterns, stress responses, and interpersonal dynamics. Pay attention to what makes them comfortable or uncomfortable, confident or defensive, generous or protective. These patterns reveal underlying psychological drivers that can inform your approach and help you avoid triggering negative reactions. Learn to recognize the signs of fatigue, stress, or emotional pressure that may not be obvious to casual observers. Power players often maintain composed exteriors while dealing with significant internal pressure. Understanding when they are struggling allows you to provide appropriate support while avoiding additional stress or demands on their attention. Develop empathy for the unique challenges and isolation that often accompany positions of power. Many powerful individuals struggle with loneliness, paranoia about others' motivations, and difficulty finding people who will provide honest feedback without ulterior motives. Recognizing and addressing these needs, when appropriate, creates deeper connections and greater loyalty. Understand their decision-making psychology, whether they prefer to make quick decisions based on intuition or carefully analyze all options, whether they respond better to optimistic or pessimistic scenarios, whether they are motivated more by potential gains or by avoiding losses. This insight allows you to frame proposals and communications in ways that align with their natural thinking patterns. Rule 11. Build multiple value propositions. Relying on a single source of value in relationships with power players creates vulnerability and limits your strategic flexibility. Developing multiple ways to contribute to their success ensures continued relevance even as their needs and circumstances change over time. Identify various domains where you can provide ongoing value: information and analysis, strategic advice, operational support, relationship facilitation, problem solving, or specialized expertise. Having multiple value propositions means that changes in their situation or priorities do not eliminate your usefulness entirely. Continue developing new skills and capabilities that could become valuable to your network. Power players respect individuals who are constantly growing and improving their ability to contribute. This might involve learning new languages, developing technical expertise, expanding your professional network, or gaining experience in new industries or markets. Adapt your value propositions as their needs evolve. Someone who initially valued your market analysis might later need help with international expansion, regulatory compliance, or crisis management. Staying alert to changing needs and developing relevant capabilities maintains your position as situations change. Consider how your various capabilities can be combined to create unique solutions that competitors cannot easily replicate. The intersection of different skills, experiences, and relationships often creates the most valuable and defensible positions in elite networks. Rule 12. Maintain strategic patience and long-term perspective. Relationships with power players often develop over years or even decades, with the most significant opportunities emerging only after extensive trust and mutual respect have been established. Maintaining strategic patience while consistently delivering value requires discipline and confidence in your long-term approach. Resist the temptation to push for immediate returns on your investment of time and attention. Power players are experienced at recognizing when someone is trying to advance their own agenda too quickly or aggressively. They prefer to work with individuals who demonstrate genuine interest in mutual success rather than obvious self-promotion. View temporary setbacks or disappointments as part of the natural evolution of complex relationships, rather than permanent failures. Power players face constant pressure and changing circumstances that may temporarily reduce their availability or ability to provide opportunities. Maintaining consistent support during difficult periods often strengthens relationships more than success during easy times. Plan for multiple scenarios and timelines rather than depending on specific outcomes within defined timeframes. The path to significant opportunities through elite networks is rarely linear or predictable. Having alternative approaches and flexible expectations allows you to adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining progress toward your objectives. Invest in relationship maintenance even when no immediate opportunities are apparent. Regular communication, continued value creation, and ongoing demonstration of reliability and competence ensure that you remain visible when opportunities do arise. Many valuable opportunities emerge suddenly and are offered to individuals who are immediately available and trusted. Rule 13. Protect your strategic assets through operational security. Operating within elite networks requires sophisticated understanding of operational security to protect your relationships, information, and strategic position from competitors, media attention, or other threats that could undermine your effectiveness or damage your reputation. Develop strict protocols for handling confidential information shared by your network. This includes secure communication methods, document storage systems, and policies about what information can be shared with whom, under what circumstances. Breaches of confidentiality can permanently destroy relationships and reputation within elite circles. Understand the various threats that could compromise your position, competitors seeking to undermine your relationships, media attempts to extract information about your connections, or legal situations that could require disclosure of privileged communications. Having plans for handling these situations protects both you and your network. Maintain separation between your public persona and your private activities within elite networks. Social media, public speaking, and other visible activities should be carefully managed to avoid revealing information about relationships or activities that should remain private. Many power players avoid association with individuals who seek public attention or reveal details about their private interactions. Build redundancy into your network and information systems to prevent single points of failure from destroying your strategic position. This includes maintaining relationships across multiple networks, diversifying your sources of information and opportunity, and having contingency plans for situations where primary relationships become unavailable or compromised. The transformation process. Destroying the weak self. The 13 rules of networking with power players represent external strategies for building influence and opportunity within elite circles. However, their effective implementation requires a fundamental internal transformation. The systematic destruction of the weak self that makes one vulnerable to manipulation, intimidation, and exploitation by more sophisticated operators. This transformation is not accomplished through a single dramatic event, but rather through a gradual process of psychological reconstruction that eliminates vulnerabilities while developing the mental discipline and emotional control necessary for operating at the highest levels of power and influence. The weak self manifests in numerous ways that can undermine even the most sophisticated external strategies. Emotional reactivity reveals true feelings and intentions that should remain hidden. The need for approval creates dependency relationships that can be exploited by others. Inconsistent behavior based on mood or circumstances makes one appear unreliable to individuals who require absolute consistency from their associates. Fear of confrontation or rejection limits one's ability to pursue opportunities aggressively when necessary. Perhaps most dangerously, the weak self creates internal narratives that justify limitation and excuse failure rather than demanding the level of performance necessary for success in elite environments. These narratives often sound reasonable and even noble, concerns about authenticity, fairness, or maintaining personal relationships, but they ultimately serve to protect the ego from the demanding work of genuine transformation and strategic excellence. The destruction of this weak self begins with honest assessment of current psychological patterns and limitations. This requires the uncomfortable process of acknowledging ways in which emotional needs, fears, and assumptions currently limit effectiveness and create vulnerabilities that others can exploit. Most individuals prefer to avoid this level of self-examination because it reveals the gap between their current capabilities and the demands of their ambitions. Emotional regulation represents the foundation of this transformation. Power players observe how potential associates handle pressure, disappointment, success, and unexpected challenges. Individuals who cannot maintain consistent emotional control appear weak and unreliable regardless of their other capabilities. Developing this control requires practicing emotional discipline in progressively more challenging situations while building the psychological strength to maintain composure under any circumstances. Mental discipline extends beyond emotional control to include the ability to think strategically even when personal interests or preferences might suggest different approaches. The weak self often makes decisions based on short-term comfort, personal likes and dislikes, or the desire to avoid difficult conversations. The transformed self makes decisions based on strategic objectives and long-term consequences, implementing chosen strategies regardless of momentary feelings or preferences. This transformation also requires developing immunity to common manipulation tactics used by sophisticated individuals to test or exploit others. Power players often probe for weaknesses through various methods, creating artificial scarcity to test desperation, offering false intimacy to encourage inappropriate sharing, or applying social pressure to observe reactions under stress. Understanding these tactics and maintaining strategic composure regardless of external pressure demonstrates the psychological strength necessary for advancement within elite circles. The process involves reconstructing one's relationship with success and failure, developing the resilience to pursue ambitious objectives despite inevitable setbacks and disappointments. The weak self often becomes discouraged by rejection or failure, interpreting these experiences as evidence of inadequacy rather than as natural consequences of pursuing challenging objectives. The transformed self maintains strategic focus and emotional equilibrium regardless of specific outcomes, using all experiences as information for refining approach and improving effectiveness. Perhaps most importantly, this transformation requires developing genuine confidence based on demonstrated competence, rather than external validation. The weak self seeks approval and reassurance from others, creating dependency relationships that can be exploited by those who recognize this need. The transformed self operates from internal confidence based on proven ability to create value, solve problems, and achieve objectives regardless of others' opinions or reactions. This confidence manifests in the ability to maintain strategic relationships without emotional attachment to specific outcomes. While working diligently to build influence and create opportunities, the transformed individual remains psychologically independent of any particular relationship or result. This independence paradoxically makes one more attractive to power players, who respect individuals who do not appear desperate or needy while still being committed to excellence and mutual success. The transformation process also involves developing a sophisticated understanding of power dynamics and human psychology that allows for effective navigation of complex social and political environments. This includes understanding how different types of people respond to various approaches, recognizing when one is being tested or manipulated, and maintaining strategic awareness of how one's actions and communications are likely to be interpreted by others. Ethical considerations require careful attention during this transformation. The goal is not to become manipulative or exploitative, but rather to develop the psychological strength and strategic intelligence necessary to protect one's interests while building genuinely valuable relationships. The transformed self operates from a position of strength and integrity rather than weakness and desperation, making ethical behavior a strategic advantage rather than a limitation. The relationship between this internal transformation and the external networking strategies creates a powerful synergy. The 13 rules provide specific tactics for building relationships with power players, while the destruction of the weak self provides the psychological foundation necessary for implementing these tactics effectively and authentically. Without this internal transformation, attempts to implement sophisticated networking strategies often appear forced or manipulative to experienced power players who quickly recognize when someone is operating beyond their natural psychological capacity. However, when the internal transformation is complete, these strategies become natural expressions of a mind that has been restructured for strategic excellence and sophisticated influence. The timeline for this transformation varies significantly depending on individual starting points and the intensity of commitment to the process. Some individuals may achieve substantial progress within months if they approach the work with complete dedication and have opportunities to practice new behaviors in challenging situations. Others may require years of consistent effort, particularly if they must first overcome deeply ingrained patterns of thinking and reacting that have been reinforced over decades. The process is neither comfortable nor easy. It requires sustained effort to change fundamental aspects of personality and behavior while simultaneously developing new skills and capabilities. Many individuals begin this transformation but abandon it when the psychological demands become uncomfortable or when progress seems slower than expected. However, those who complete the process discover that they have developed capabilities and opportunities that seemed impossible from their previous psychological position. Regular assessment and adjustment of the transformation process ensures continued progress and prevents stagnation. This involves honest evaluation of current capabilities compared to the demands of one's objectives, identification of remaining vulnerabilities that could be exploited by others, and recognition of new skills or perspectives that would enhance effectiveness in elite environments. The ultimate goal is to become someone who cannot be destroyed by others because all fundamental vulnerabilities have been eliminated through conscious development and strategic psychological reconstruction. This does not mean becoming invulnerable to all forms of attack or challenge, but rather developing the psychological strength and strategic intelligence to maintain effectiveness and pursue objectives regardless of external pressure or opposition. When this transformation is combined with sophisticated networking strategies, the result is an individual capable of building and maintaining relationships with the most influential people in any field while advancing their own objectives through mutual value creation rather than dependence or manipulation. This combination creates sustainable competitive advantages that compound over time as relationships deepen and opportunities multiply through network effects. The individual who has completed this transformation operates from a fundamentally different psychological position than most people. They maintain strategic focus regardless of emotional pressures, build relationships based on value creation rather than personal need, and pursue ambitious objectives with patience and persistence that outlasts competitors who lack similar psychological strength. This transformation represents the foundation upon which all advanced influence and networking strategies must be built. Without it, even the most sophisticated external tactics remain vulnerable to the psychological limitations and emotional reactions that characterize the weak self. With it, however, the 13 rules of networking with power players become powerful tools for building the type of relationships and opportunities that can transform careers, industries, and ultimately, the trajectory of one's entire life. The man who destroys his weak self cannot be destroyed by others because he has eliminated the internal vulnerabilities that external forces require to create leverage. He operates from strength rather than weakness, strategy rather than emotion, and long-term vision rather than immediate gratification. This psychological position, combined with sophisticated networking capabilities, creates the foundation for sustained success in any environment where power, influence, and strategic relationships determine outcomes. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.